You may have heard me talk about the fact that to protect assets for your surviving spouse when you're gone against long-term care costs, you must have a will that contains a testamentary asset protection supplemental needs trust. Sometimes we get the question, well, what if I have a revocable living trust? The attorney told me that the Revocable Living Trust will work here in the state of Washington and accomplish that purpose. So, this is a little bit complicated, bear with me. A Revocable Living Trust is typically used to avoid probate. You need to have a probate in order to establish a testamentary asset protection trust. So how could a revocable living trust plan work to protect assets for your surviving spouse? This is how the plan sometime is set up, and it really does lead to confusion because the client thinks that they're avoiding probate. But that's not what the lawyer had in mind. Perhaps they didn't explain it. So sometimes what lawyers do is they will recommend a revocable living trust, and they'll say, and it'll protect assets for your surviving spouse against long-term care costs. But what they don't tell you is they are setting up your plan with a revocable living trust, and it will specifically say that on your death, rather than being no probate, just a trust administration, the trust will pay to your estate. And when it pays to your estate, it will go through your will. And through your will, which must be probated, then the trust, asset protection trust, will be created through your will, through your probate, to set aside assets for your spouse. If it sounds convoluted, it is. Because most people with a revocable living trust say, no, the lawyer told me this avoids probate. That's normally how a revocable living trust is set up. But sometimes attorneys will say, oh no, we can avoid probate, we can do a revocable living trust, and if your spouse needs asset protection, then that will happen too. They don't explain to you how that will happen is through a probate, through a will being filed, and the trust isn't working as a trust typically operates. So if you have that situation yourself, I encourage you to go back to the attorney who drafted your plan for you, who suggested a revocable living trust for your property in Washington, and find out really what your plan is intended to do. How does it work? Will there be a probate on your death? That way you'll at least understand, and your family won't be surprised when they find out there actually is going to be a probate upon the death rather than just a trust administration. So it really gets confusing because typically trusts, revocable living trusts, are intended to avoid probate. Sometimes the lawyer will set it up to do a probate, to have a probate, and the client may not understand what is going on with their plan. As an estate planning and elder law attorney, my goal is to make sure that we share with you information so that you understand your plan and what your options are rather than being in the dark.